Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.
How do we make sure that we involve multiple family members in this conversation?
I think it is when we have family members together at Christmas time, at Thanksgiving, when we are getting together for birthdays, we can tell our family members, if I'm the parent, you know what, I have an advanced healthcare directive and it says I'm going to do this. And this is what I really want. Is that what you really want? That's what I really want. And like you said, it gives permission to the other family members to start talking about it and say, you know what? I want this. And this is what I want to happen with my remains. So when we're getting our family together and we know, okay, I want everybody on the same page and no one to feel like they're slighted and someone else is in a better position than someone else and someone else has more information than someone else. I want my children, because when I leave here, my children, they're going to have to work together.
Welcome to the Unlocking the Club podcast, where we host honest and direct conversations about journeys of access, personal truth, and reclaiming space. We share our truth so that you can find the key to own your truth, honor your journey, and reclaim your space. Grab your keys, your wallet, your phone, and invite your friends to meet you at the club. Here's your host, Angela Taylor.
Welcome to a very, very special series of Unlocking the Club, where we explore one of the most important yet often overlooked conversations that we can have. Conversation about estate planning and elder care. I'm your host, Angela Taylor, and over the past few years, my family, my friends, we've learned the hard way about the critical importance of having a will or a trust in place. When unexpected moments arise, not having a plan can leave families vulnerable, and I've seen firsthand how it can create chaos during already challenging times. Recently, I conducted a poll, and the results were startling. 80% of the people that I polled between the ages of 20 and 65 don't have a will or a trust in place. Even more striking is that most of those who do take action, it's only after experiencing a tragic event in their family. National data suggests and supports this as well, with studies showing that a significant majority of adults, particularly between and within the Black and BIPOC communities, have not taken steps to secure their legacies. And when we fail to plan, we leave our families with legal battles, financial burdens, and emotional stress that can take years to untangle. That's why here at Unlocking the Club, we're dedicating an entire 12-part series to unlocking the essentials of estate planning, with bonus episodes focused on adjacent topics. Together with two brilliant minds, Shane Jasmine Young from Young Law Group and Verleana Green-Telusca from VDG Law Group, we'll break down what you need to know about protecting your assets, building a legacy, and making sure your loved ones are cared for when it matters the most. Our goal in this series is to equip you with the knowledge and the tools to take action now before life forces you to. Whether you're just starting out or navigating the complexities of caring for aging loved ones, these conversations will give you the clarity and the confidence to plan for your future. So grab your notebooks, tune in, and let's unlock this critical conversation together. Welcome to Unlocking the Club's special series on estate planning and elder care. Welcome back to another episode of Unlocking the Club. I'm your host, Angela Taylor, and we are taking this little journey on a 12-part series about estate planning and elder care. In today's episode, we're actually going to talk about conversations about end of life. Talking about end of life wishes can really be uncomfortable, but it's one of the most important conversations you'll ever have with loved ones. Today, we'll explore how to approach these sensitive discussions, what documents to have in place, and why planning ahead can ease the emotional and logistical burdens for everyone involved. Joining us today to discuss conversations about end-of-life wishes is Verleana Green-Telusca of VDG Law Group. Verleana, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Angela. And thank you for
Absolutely.
having me to discuss such an important, sensitive issue that is so vital to making sure that our family's emotional health is well when we do transition. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I do. I think that this is like the technical and tactical elements are important, but this is one of those things that feels like it is oftentimes the obstacle that prevents us from moving forward with our estate planning and getting a trust or whatever we need to do,
Mm.
having and as a result, this actually showed itself to be true in the survey that I took about a year ago, as I was asking folks whether they had a estate plan in place or not, and for those that did, why they had an estate plan in place. One of the other questions was for those that did not, what was preventing them from putting something in place? And the responses were anything from, that I don't have enough money, that I haven't had time, that I'm going to get to it. I just like am trying to figure out when I need to prioritize it. But the one thing that stood out was I don't know how to have this conversation. We don't talk about these things in our family. And so one of the reasons I really wanted to have this conversation with you, Verleana, because I know that you've had both professional and personal experience in these really difficult conversations. So in your experience, like why is it important to have conversations about end of life wishes, even though they can be uncomfortable or difficult?
I think there's two reasons. One is the legal side, right? We don't want to get into legal battles with our family members trying to decide what our actual wishes are. So the first thing is if we want to be buried or cremated. When you are when someone transitions, you go to the funeral home. The first thing the funeral director will say to you, did this person have an advanced healthcare directive? And if they did, what does it say regarding how they want their remains to be handled? That will determine what's going to happen with your body. So, legally, this is something that's important because if you have that document in place, that document trumps anything that family members thought you said about how you want your remains and even the conversation you had right before you passed away. That legal document says this is how we're going to handle the remains of this particular person, buried or cremated. And there,
Yeah.
depending on what state you're in, there might be other options. So that's the legal aspect of it. We want to make sure that our wishes are heard and that they're abided by because it's something that's important to us, right? It's what we want done. So it's important to us and our families to make sure that we have some sort of closure and that we're doing the right thing. And I can tell you now that I'm working on my aunt who just recently passed away. She passed away 2 weeks ago. And of course, I was the person who was her next of kin in making those decisions. And we had to talk about those things. Even though she had a mental disability, we had to talk about those things before she transitioned. And those conversations aren't easy. But when I went into the funeral director's when I went to Chapel of the Chimes, that's where she is, I was able to tell Chapel of the Chimes, this is what my aunt wanted, and have no question in the back of my head, am I making the right decision? So emotionally, so legally, yes, we want to make that decision in a way where we are upholding what the person says and we're upholding the law because they wrote it down. It's a contract. And then emotionally, right? We wanna have some sort of closure and to make sure that we're not second guessing what that person wanted to happen with their remains.
Mm. Well, first and foremost, our sympathies for the loss, and so grateful for you for sharing that perspective because it is the balance, like, right, in the role that you play, you also are a human being and going through these things as well. And so much of the guidance and advice that you've been providing throughout this series comes from personal space, and that makes it even more powerful. And I can echo some of your sentiments about the emotional aspect of this. When someone does pass and you are sitting at that table with family members or whoever's at that table with the funeral directors, it feels transactional, because this is something that the funeral directors do multiple times a day on a daily basis. And so they know all the questions that need to be asked and answered. They know all the processes that have to be confirmed and solidified. And so for you who's still grieving, right, you're still trying to reconcile this loss and are going through the grief process. And if you don't have clarity over what the wishes of your loved one was, these questions can be agitating, can be frustrating, can be overwhelming. You might be trying to comfort somebody else who's in that room who may not have the same perspective as you have. And if you have this document that provides the clarity that their wishes are being honored, it makes these conversations so much easy is not the right word. I'm going to say fluid. Makes these conversations more fluid because you have the right answers.
Exactly. And you're able to heal in a different way. You're not second guessing about this thing. You're able to think about, how can I, honor this person? How can I pay respect to this person? And you're not wondering, did I do that with what I'm doing with their remains? You know that that's the truth with the decision that you make with regard to their remains, how they're handled. And Angela, it's the funniest thing when I'm doing estate planning and I'm talking about this subject. It is hilarious, particularly when it comes to couples. And we're going over the Advanced Healthcare Directive. I take 2 hours typically to go over an estate plan. So I'm going over your power of attorney, Advanced Healthcare Directive, living trust, and pour over will. And then when we get to the Advanced Healthcare Directive and we're talking about the remains, I have couples, what? You want that? What?
Right. So the 20 questions you asked, right? Yes.
What? You really? Why would you want to do that? And then you have couples who want different things and they're like, okay, well, just, particularly when it comes to the burial and the cremation, I have couples who often say, okay, well, just bury my remains with my spouse because I want to be cremated. They don't want to be cremated. Just bury my ashes with them then. So it makes it, easier for both spouses to reconcile. Okay, we want two different things, but we're together, right?
Yep. We just mutually have agreed to what is best for each other. Yeah.
Right. And it's so funny because sometimes spouses or children or parents and children, they don't talk about this stuff. So when we're doing the estate planning process, they're surprised, they're shocked. And we also have to keep in mind, we go through different stages in life. So our wishes change over time, right? So our belief systems, they go through maturity, they go through different changes. And so when we get clear on what we actually want, it may not be until we're 45, until we're 50, until we're 60. And we're saying, you know what? That's what I thought when I was 20. But now I've considered it and I want something totally different than what my family probably heard me say back in the 1970s about what I wanted. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so important. Well, and I wonder, do you have any advice for how to get these conversations started? Like, what's worked for you? What do you think has worked for those clients that have done so successfully in advance? What kind of advice do you have us?
Have the conversation. And I think if you have it with a third party, like the estate planner in the room, and you're able to kind of rip off that Band-Aid and say, what is going to happen to your body when you pass away? And I always tell my clients, it's so funny, you're going to pass away, right? We all are. And I tell my daughter, she says, Mommy, I don't want to. And I said, well, create some sort of cure so human beings can live forever, because until that happens, we're all going to go. It's part of the life experience. And I tell them, you know what? It's okay. It's just part of the circle of life. And I always just rip the Band-Aid off. So what do you want to happen? You want to be buried or cremated? Like
Just matter of fact, right? Just
matter of fact, because it gets us out of that thinking that, you know what, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to discuss it, because I do have clients who they don't put anything. We have a checklist that we give our clients and we ask, do you want to be buried or cremated? Circle one. So some people don't circle it. And so I said, which one do you want me to circle? And so sometimes it's easier to have that conversation, make it funny, especially saying to the spouse, oh, you said this, and tell the other spouse, oh, you said this. Really? You want that? I didn't know that. So it makes it, a conversation that seems like a regular conversation. It doesn't seem taboo and we shouldn't discuss that. Maybe we should tiptoe around it. No, we need to talk about this, because what happens is the impact of not talking about it when we do transition is far greater than the initial sting of coming to the reality. We are all mortal beings. We will die one day.
Yeah.
So just talking about it and saying, you know what, before and Angela, I find that it's a harder conversation when I have clients who have terminal illnesses and they're getting started with their estate plan, or they're in the hospital and they need something done right away. That's where it gets hard.
Yeah.
But when you don't need it, and we can laugh about it, we can talk about how you want your services to look. We can talk about who do you want playing music at your services? What kind of music do you want to hear? Yeah. We can talk about certain things like that when you don't need it. And when it seems so far away and we're not really thinking about that day coming, it makes the conversation a lot easier.
Absolutely. So literally what you're saying is, and listeners, pay attention to this, give yourself permission to have this conversation. It's not a bad thing. I think in our minds, or in the back of our minds, we have a negative connotation to having these conversations, but we need to give each other and ourselves permission and the grace to be able to have these conversations. There's no perfect way. So I love the fact that if you bring a little humor into it, a little lighthearted banter and conversation to, again, demystify what this conversation can be about. And I guarantee you, you can have fun. It is so nice as someone who has had to take on the role of planning someone's funeral and not having the answers. It is so stressful, because not only are you trying to answer the questions, get things organized, but you're trying to think, am I doing the right thing? And so as loved ones, let's take that stress and the burden off of the family and the friends that are left to carry the burden. All right, let's give ourselves permission to have these conversations and be proactive. My oldest brother came up to us a couple of years ago and was like, here's my plan. Right, I want to be cremated, da, 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 da. And at first I was like, and then the next day I was so appreciative that he gave us permission to start having this conversation. And it started to be a multiple layered conversation in our family, because he was a catalyst for that. And so in that, how do we involve multiple family members in the conversation to avoid potential disagreements or conflicts down the line? I think that oftentimes happens with children, right? So between siblings and their parents' wishes, one sibling may be close to the parent or in proximity or just in relationship, and there might be disagreements. How do we make sure that we involve multiple family members in this conversation?
I think it is when we have family members together at Christmas time, at Thanksgiving, when we are getting together for birthdays, we can tell our family members, if I'm the parent, you know what, I have an advanced healthcare directive and it says I'm going to do this. And this is what I really want. Is that what you really want? That's what I really want. And like you said, it gives permission to the other family members to start talking about it and say, you know what, want this. And this is what I want to happen with my remains. So when we're getting our family together and we know, okay, I want everybody on the same page and no one to feel like they're slighted and someone else is in a better position than someone else and someone else has more information than someone else. I want my children, because when I leave here, my children, they're going to have to work together. So if I want to lessen the animosity, lessen the family drama, make sure that when I'm gone, that they're sticking together, I want to have a conversation with all of them. And the funny thing is for me, my mom, she was, the central person in my family, and I love her. And we knew she was going to transition because she had stomach cancer. So in 2018, we decided to get all of, I helped and assisted with making sure she had all this stuff in place. And my husband was asking me about it yesterday. And she had property in Texas and she transferred some of her assets to make sure that we had that property, not Texas, but in Louisiana. And we had those assets and it went to me and my two sisters. And what I did was I did a video recording of my mother. And I have it and I shared it with my siblings and with my nieces when she transitioned. And she talked about her legacy, how she wanted to be remembered, what she wanted to happen. She left something for each one of her grandchildren, and she told them what she wanted them to hear. So having that and having those conversations, and even if all the kids aren't there, tape recording it and then sharing it with your family members so that they're all in the know and it's not just you. So if you don't feel comfortable with, just outright at the dinner table at Christmas or at a holiday or at a birthday party or whenever your family gets together, you can have one person tape it and share it with the family. That's another route. And that works with our family.
I absolutely love, love, love that. That's a gift. To a certain extent, that is a really powerful and amazing gift that your mother gave to you all and that you were part of. And so with that, whether you are recording a video or some audio for your family members to honor your wishes, or you're at the Thanksgiving table, what are the questions that should be answered? What are the things that need to be circled on the form that you can make sure that you're covering a comprehensive conversation?
Okay. One is, do you want to be buried or cremated? 2, how long should we keep you alive? Because I know different people have different things that they believe in, have different religions, spiritual practices, etc. And I want to know if you were in what we call a continuous vegetative state, aka brain dead, do you want to be left on life support or not? What should we do? Because you're not here to tell us what you want to happen. So you have to let us know, should we keep you alive for a couple of weeks, couple of days, couple of years? And what does that look like? Because then we also have to talk about the cost if you're talking about a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on the person. And we want to make sure that no one's in the hospital. If mom's on life support, dad's on life support, kids on, what is going to happen to this person? Should we pull the plug or not? Right. And that's a hard thing to say, but you'll be pleasantly surprised. And I'm always pleasantly surprised that people know. People will have the answer and say, you know what? I know, or yes, depending on their belief system.
Yeah.
The 1, buried or cremated. 2, if I'm in a irreversible coma or persistent vegetative state, should you keep me on life support? And do you want services or not? That's also important. I know in my family, my uncle, I was assisting in my uncle's estate planning, and I know I have family members who are quite upset because he specifically stated he did not want services.
Wow. Really?
he didn't want it. So we didn't have services, and we had a lot of people who were quite upset. I know I was kind of upset too, but we had to go with his wishes. That's what he said.
Yep. Yep. That's what he wanted. Yeah.
That's what he wanted. And everybody is different. Some people do want services, other people don't. So having that conversation. So if we don't have to have services and you have someone who says, you know what, just maybe have something for me, have your own thing for me, think of me in this way, then you should definitely have that discussion, because you don't want to have this big funeral, this big memorial service when your family member is saying, I don't want that. That's for you.
That's for you. Yeah.
Honoring my legacy. Can you honor my legacy the way I would appreciate you honoring my legacy? So just keeping that in mind, we want to make sure that someone is transitioning out of this particular life in the way that they want to.
That's great. That's great. Well, and even those questions for the obituary, like some of the data or the facts of when they graduated or their siblings or who they want mentioned, or, clubs that they belong to. So kind of being clear about what they want in that, and the music, as you mentioned, Verleana, you want played, who you want singing or not singing, or reading the eulogy at the
or even, do you want to speakers or not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want people just to come up if they feel the urge, or no. And I think an important piece too is for those of you who have family members who may be in fraternal organizations, so Masonic families, do they want a Masonic funeral or no? Because the Masonic funerals are very intentional and maybe don't allow for the flexibility and the freedom that families may want. And so what are their wishes? If they're a veteran and we're in the military, do they want a military funeral? Being clear about those different things, because if they do want a military funeral, there's some support that you could receive from the military and armed forces with some funeral proceeds as well.
Absolutely. Those are definitely some great ideas to think about. What is it really going to look like? Because funeral services, when we have veterans, and I know my uncle who didn't want services, he was a veteran, but we didn't need to use those services because it wasn't necessary. So I think having all of those things in place so that there's no confusion, there's no fighting, and it's clear what you want to happen, so that it can be a drama-free way that we allow our loved ones to transition from this green side of the earth into the next. So it's important that we think about those things and we have those conversations. And like I said, you don't want to have those conversations, let's just tape it.
No, such great advice. Well, so again, thank you so much for the perspective on how to have these conversations. And what I'm hearing is like there's no perfect conversation. There's no perfectly orchestrated conversation or perfect time to have it. But the perfect time is now, is before you actually realize that you need it, and just making it a conversation, not putting too much pressure or stress on yourself about the conversation. But Verleana, thank you again. I think this is a really important topic. We talk about the technical, from taxes to advanced directives or power of attorneys, but just how to start the conversation, I think, is a really important piece of this series. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, Angela. And for those of you who need help and need assistance with starting the conversation, please feel free to reach out to us. We're at www.v as in victory, D as in daughter, G as in girl, law.com, 510-479-0768.
Awesome. And trust me, sometimes it's nice to have a third party being part of the conversation, asking you the right questions. It takes the pressure off of whoever has to be the communicator in the family, and it allows the experts to ask the questions and get the information that's necessary. So take Verleana up on her offer, give her a call, check out the website, and get the support. Again, for another episode of Unlocking the Club with our special 12-part series on estate planning and elder care, I'm your host, Angela Taylor. So grateful for our special guest, Verleana Green-Telusca from VDG Law. And until next time, make sure you subscribe, Make sure you share these episodes with your friends and family. And as you've heard throughout each episode, the time is now. Take action on your future in building and protecting your legacy. Again, for Unlocking the Club, I'm Angela Taylor. Until next time, be well.
Thanks for listening to Unlocking the Club. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or your favorite streaming platform so that you can experience every episode. And follow us on social media, where you'll hear about future guests, access special features, and connect with this amazing community. Head on over there and let us know how you are unlocking the club. Until next time, peace.